So originally the skid plate was 13 and what was it, 7/8 inches off the ground, which when you get set up here, you start realizing how small that is. That's right about there. So I picked up 2 all the way up here. So bottom of the plate now is just at about 16 inches. So I picked up 2 3/8 inches of ground clearance here by doing it by the end. So one of the interesting things, and it was kind of a good angle to show, the body sill, where I've got my little graphics, was uneven before. I was a little lower in the front than I was in the back. I was sitting at 22 3/8 inches off the ground right there at the sill. You know, just right there at the sill to the ground. After putting in the 1-inch lift, I jumped all the way up to 24 inches. So that was 1 5/8 inch gain that I had, which was terrific. Obviously that gives you a lot more room for bigger tires too, which is the plus of, you know, a small body lift. So I gained quite a bit. Now obviously I gained on my skid plate, I gained 2 3/8 inches off the ground altogether when the project was all done. So I'm not moving up the body really as much as I'm moving up the skid plate, because there is some room between the transmission and the transfer case and the body. So there are plenty of videos out there about actually installing the new mounts for your body. I will say most of them make it look pretty dang easy. You know, the one trick they talk about is you do one side of the Jeep and then you do the other, and that keeps the body from moving around. Definitely holds up, and that's definitely true. The thing to keep in mind, you have 5 mounts on each side. So there's 5 across this side and 5 that match on the other side, and then you have 1 in the very front. So you have a total of 11 that you need to remove. This gives you a pretty good idea here. You look right there, there it is. So if you look at your Jeep right now, here on the back, you've got 1 on each corner. This is a 1-inch lift. The original one is, you know, a little bit flatter, a little bit shorter, probably squished, broken, worn out. All right, so this is the easiest one to look at. Here underneath the driver's door, you have 1 right there in front of the rear wheel. You have 2 of them that are back underneath, kind of right above the rear axle, and they're centered up a little bit more. You have the 1 in the back corner. You've got 1 right there. That one's actually a pretty easy one to get to up through that hole. And then you have the 1 up front. I'll get a picture of that too. Here's where the mount is here in the front. It's right there. If you pull this little plastic cover off, if you still have that on your Jeep, you can get to the top of it right here. And it's right here underneath. So that one's pretty easy to get to. And what I discovered was that somebody put some spacers in this one trying to lift the front, but that one here in the front was really worn out. And I think that's what provided me with the balance that I needed, leveling there on everything. The thing to keep in mind is, as you can see, these are totally exposed to the elements, driving around, everything else is right sitting out. They are going to be rusted really bad. And you can't get to the tops of these very easily. You can get to this one here by going up through this little hole right here. You can get to the top. The one on the very front, you can get to the top. But these ones in the back are very difficult to get to. So the best thing I can suggest is you got to soak these things with some penetrating oil. And the only way to get to them, because they're in little pockets inside the body, is to go inside, find the little humps where the bolt is, and drill a hole. So I'll show you a little bit about that. So what you'll find is right above where the mount is, so you have the mount right there. If you come right up above, this one falls right here kind of along the front edge, leading edge, where it drops down from your seat into the wheel well. And there's a spot there, and you'll be able to kind of find that one okay, although it doesn't have a hump. There's also one right underneath the seat belts right here, and that one's easy to find. It's a big nipple on the floor, just right here. The lighting's not very good, and I want to pull the seat belts back out, but there's a nipple right there. the best thing you do is you just take a drill bit, just big enough for the nozzle of your spray can, and just drill a hole straight into the top of it. And that'll put you right on top of the bolt. And then you can spray right onto the top of that with some penetrating fluid. Spray it for days. That's what you're gonna need to do. Then there's one in the back, or there's the two in the back. You need to remove your seat belts and your carpet, and they're basically located in the middle, kind of on either side here. And you'll be able to see those. There's they're kind of square, little humps next to the ridges, that strength ridges that run across it. And you, again, drill right into the top of those so you can spray right down on the bolt. These ones in the corners, they're a little more difficult. You got to take the plastic out from underneath, and then you can get in there and you can actually drill from the side, get a little hole in there. You can also spray. There's kind of a little bit of an opening. You can spray in there and just soak everything, and you'll get to it as well. But these things will be rusted. They're going to be really tough. I was able to get all of them off except the two that are here at the seats. So the center one here and on the other side, both of those would not come loose. And then when they finally did come loose, it was the bolt or the nut that they screw into, and that made it very, very difficult. So I ended up having to cut a hole in the floor, get in there. I cut the bolt off, was able to stick a new bolt through, had to weld up some nuts to set down in that hole. And then once I did that, I was able to put it all back together and weld it back together, paint it, so on. So that was way more work than it should have been, but welcome to having an old Jeep. So one of the things I decided to do while I was putting on the body lift, since it's getting the body up off the frame, was to clean up the frame. Now I don't have any big rust problems on my frame at all, but a little surface rust. It was a little, you know, just old. It hadn't been, nothing had ever been done to it. So I was able to paint that up with some rust inhibiting primer and then paint over it. And it's a lot easier to do when you don't have your mounts in. So while I had it lifted up on the jack on each side, I just went down and sprayed the whole thing inside and out, top, bottom, the whole works. Well, first I cleaned it all up with some wire brush and a grinding wheel and that kind of a thing, just to get it real nice and clean, and then painted it all up. So it turned out pretty good, pretty easy to do. Didn't add a lot of time to the project. You know, I guess a day or so, just let it all dry, and as I worked my way through it. But it's a good time to do that, since you don't want your frame rusting out.